episode 149 Above Ground Podcast. The tables have turned.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Are you ready to lace up your boots, throw up your horns, and jump into the pit? Then let's stomp the stigmas of mental illness. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now, Will Foley and Timothy Patrick.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to
Above Ground Podcast.
Whoa, heavy on the loudness there. Wow. Yeah, we're back for another week. TPP, you know who that is? You down with TPP? You down.
That's got to be cut out.
All right,
ready?
We have a really special,
Take two.
We have a really special episode this evening. Actually, we have a guest with us. My wife, Heather Foley, is here. Say hi.
Hi.
Wow, look at that. The sultry saying.
Is this thing on?
What are you doing this evening? How are you, and why have you joined us for this fun-filled, however long it goes on for, train wreck?
Well, I'm joining you lovely gentlemen this evening because you're in my house. But aside from that, I'm joining you because for the longest time I thought, hey, these two guys over here, and they need to be interviewed instead of being the interviewers all the time. So here we are. We're going to break it down with Will and Tim on the Above Ground Podcast tonight.
Wow.
So I've got a list of questions here that I'm going to be asking you tonight that I came up with all on my own.
Wow.
So we're going to delve into these craniums of you guys and see what's really up in here.
Up in here.
Up in here.
Yeah, up in here.
All right. So, and you guys can answer individually, together, rock, paper, scissors, whatever works. Here we go. So, for those folks who are just joining you, maybe for the first time ever, or maybe for the 148th time, or whatever episode number this is this evening, maybe they could use a good refresher. So, what inspired you both, and how did this whole podcast start in the first place?
I think I don't know if I was inspired right away. It was more of coming from the place that I can't, like, I guess coming from being, I don't know how to put it, coming from a place of suffering, my own suffering and my own hell, and being able to walk through that inferno with some skills and the knowledge that there's stuff that is out here that can help people and help decrease their suffering that I didn't know about. So I assumed that others didn't know about it as well. So I was like, well, you know, this could be beneficial to some people. And maybe the inspiration kind of came later when Will and I kind of, maybe it was more of a Will's idea with the podcast.
Dude, it was literally like running into you.
Yeah.
Almost literally and figuratively in Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And literally coming around the corner and like literally, okay, how's this going to turn out? And then having the conversation about just checking in, seeing where we were both at, and then deciding we were going to get together for lunch.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to you that I was been thinking about a podcast for a while just because it's like the perfect medium to try. And I remember you saying that you had kind of had the same idea, and you were telling me about all the peer stuff, because that was at that point I had been I had been involved with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for a couple of years at that point, but I wasn't as knee deep in it as I would become. And when we started to put this idea together in like 2018, because it took almost a good year for us to actually get to putting anything on tape and sitting in a room together and then starting this process. So we decided that the best way to use our voices were to use them together and create some content like we do. And the only goal for us in the beginning was I had Pat Flynn, who, if anybody out there listens to podcasts, probably knows who Pat Flynn is. He is one of the top podcast people ever. Smart Passive Income podcast was very, very influential in the beginning of this space, and back in the early 2010s. And he said that you have to have 7 episodes to go when you release your first one, and that was my goal, and we set that goal, we hit it. And the first 40 episodes are okay, but you can tell we're finding our way in a dark room sometimes, but it works, and it's become pretty cool, man. We've met some really cool people.
Met some really cool people.
We've been the caretakers of some pretty deep, heavy stories, man, and to have people come on and open their wounds up and be willing to get dirty and to get sad and to cry and to laugh, and it's pretty incredible, and I'm humbled by it.
There will be no laughing this time around. All right. So you just said that you ran into each other in Whole Foods and kind of reunited.
'Cause it
I'm not the singer in this group, but thank you, Will Foley. So that being said, how'd you guys meet in the first place?
Oh, jeez.
Music Shack, man.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was Music Shack. Yeah, Timmy.
Through Kevin, probably.
Yeah, through Kevin. But
Yeah.
it was when you were working there. That's when I first met
Right.
you.
Yeah. But you just used to come in the store a lot.
Yeah, and my poster was hanging in the store.
That's right.
Which was funny because when I found out who you were, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, because again, when we were playing out, we were playing out at the same time.
Right,
We
just
happened to be in
different
different circles.
right.
So
Yes.
I only knew who Section 8 was because of the one song that they used to play on VCR all the time, and I used to crank it up whenever I heard it. And I would go into Music Shack twice a week, every week, and Timmy was there, and Timmy was working there with Kevin Maloney, and Kevin Maloney has a really cool tie to the show now too, because our new intro music, which will be debuting pretty soon, Kevin did for us, so big shout out to him, which is awesome. So yeah, that friendship started at Music Shack, and then I eventually went to work with Timmy for the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the
next,
yeah, and I had a 8.5-year career there, and then Timmy and I didn't really get a chance to talk too much, but we were in a band together for a short amount of time.
That's true.
Called Splinters of Tomorrow, but we've known each other now for man, it's got to be 25 years. It's got to be.
Yeah,
because I was
Sounds
definitely 25 then.
Wow,
so
that's
yeah,
crazy.
dude, it's 25 years.
Quarter
man.
century club for you old timers.
Yeah.
I like it.
Like, I think about it, like all this, like everybody that is really close to me outside of a certain circle, I've known for that long. Like, it's just, it's insane.
Me too, actually, now that I think about it.
Who or what are your biggest influences in your healing journey, in your podcast journey?
Definitely Alan Watts would be on the list for me. David Goggins would be on the list for me. I like the content that Lewis Howes puts out.
What else influences you, though? Because you got way more influences than just that.
Well, I know, but but the question, I'm sticking to the question.
Well, I mean, podcast wise, of course, but also just as you travel through your journey in this thing called life.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like I said, Alan Watts is big. David Goggins is big.
What about music, dude? What about music?
What about it?
Because she's talking about your whole healing journey, not just the podcast. At least that's the way it was kind of came out to me anyway. And
Take it as you will.
Let me think about it.
All right, get back to me.
all right.
Willard Foley.
Oh, truthfully, the whole podcast thing, I happened to find by entering in through Joe Rogan back in like 2011 or so when I
Pre-censoring.
2012. That was early on.
Yeah.
And I was in Dean Dyer, who has now had several different podcasts, several start and stop podcasts. His first podcast that he did was actually really beneficial in me, like seeking help and treatment for my depression. And the biggest, the most influential teacher as far besides life has definitely been Wayne Dyer, for sure. And it's, I used to think teachers had to be some people you personally knew, but the fact is that you can get to know somebody so well as far as their teachings go by absorbing all the stuff that they put out. And luckily there's such a wealth of content that he produced that it's impossible to not be around. And Jerry Kalana's book Reboot has been so huge, man, as there's nothing like, that's where I got the excavating the wrecks, because he's the one who said it. And it's like you can't, there's no treasure until you excavate the wrecks and start cracking open the locks, man, and saying, okay, what's in there, let's do it. And I'm an old, like, I wanted to be a DJ. I really did. I did. And I think podcasting is the perfect way for people like me to live out that crazy fantasy of pretending you got the slow, sultry voice. Hey.
Yeah, I think Wayne Dyer for me a little bit too. Just now that you said it, it didn't, like, he wasn't like an original, but like just having Will introduce me to him, and then learning more about him as a person, but then also reading some of his stuff is I can't remember. He's got a few books, but the one that really, I can't remember the one that stuck out, but he would definitely be on the list for sure.
Yeah, Alan Watts for me too, though, man. I have most of the Alan Watts collection, the big collections, on my phone, and that stuff is deep stuff, man. And he was definitely a way ahead of his time. But it was funny because that whole time period produced a lot of really deep, insightful people.
If you guys, individually or together, could be on any podcast as a guest, if the sky was the limit and you could just knock on a door and say, here I am, what one would it be?
Oh, Rogan.
Yeah, that's what I would say is Rogan.
Everybody wants to.
You hear that, Joe?
Who wouldn't want to be on Rogan, man?
Yeah.
These Above Ground podcast guys want a piece of you.
But I think not.
But there's other podcasts though. That
well,
are
there
better
is, but
than
I
that.
think not necessarily. I like his space, and I like what he does. Not just because of his outreach. You know what I mean? Obviously, I would hope to get some
That's a bonus.
recognition from it, but I'm just saying, if we were to be on, I would like. I think he's a cool guy from what I understand him to be and what I see him to be, and I think he's knowledgeable all around. So I think it would just be a good conversation. I enjoy good conversations with people, and I think it would be a good one.
Yeah, me too. Just because, and I've been listening to him. And granted, I have not been listening to a lot of it recently because I'm not into hunting talk, and I don't always want to hear about MMA stuff either. I mean, I like it, but I don't want to hear about it a lot, and I don't listen to some of the odd stuff. But he's introduced me to so many good people, man. His partner Aubrey Marcus, that podcast, the Aubrey Marcus podcast, is such a fucking amazing podcast. And he's a psychonaut, and he's done a lot of deep work, man. And it's just like, it makes you want to go to the jungle and go to Peru, man, and it's awesome stuff. But yeah, I would love to sit down with him, and I would love to have a conversation with Stephen Pressfield, because The War of Art, such a huge book, and just now that he's podcasting, and that's how I found him, was through Rogan and through Aubrey Marcus and stuff. So that whole outreach, that whole crew, Duncan Trussell, Joey Diaz, even though Joey Diaz was in movies before I realized who he was, and then listening to his podcast. But his podcast is great if you just want to, be silly and, take part in things and laugh your ass off or whatever. But Aubrey Marcus's podcast would be that would be awesome. I would love to sit down with that dude.
All right. So I know you guys just mentioned books and movies a lot. So pick your top 2 favorite books. If you could have only 2 books with you for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Definitely The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz would be one of them.
It's on my to-read list.
One of the best things written. I think it's Becoming Superhuman, Joe Dispenza.
2 books. So the first book is actually a book that a lot of people may not be familiar with, but I love Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who writes a column for Spirituality and Health, and he's written books, and he actually compiled a book in 2019 called The World Wisdom Bible. And that book distills down all of the big religions, including and the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching and everything, and distills all the wisdom in sections of all of it, from the Bible, the Quran, all of it. And I think you can always find something in that book, no matter what. And then the other book is Reboot. There's been so much that's been loosened up and shifted that.
Who's that by?
Jerry Kalana. That book, and his podcast would be cool to be on too, man. I would love to sit down and talk to that dude, because that dude's so mellow.
We'll go with your top 2 favorite movies.
2?
Man, 2, Jesus.
Sorry.
Really? 2?
Nobody said this would be easy questions.
All right, I'm gonna count this as 1. But the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
All right, we'll let you do that.
Wow, you're gonna count a trilogy?
Yep.
Man.
It's all right.
All right.
And
Want to play that way?
I would probably say I'm gonna go with a comedy, just because I would probably say Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah, it's a great flick
Good
too,
one.
man. Yeah, it's a good flick. Top 2 movies.
You should love that movie. You love tater tots.
I know. Well, I do. I love Napoleon Dynamite's a great. I know. God. Top 2. I'm gonna do it because I have to.
That's what I did.
Jerry Maguire. Because now here's the toss up. It's either Jaws or Rocky. Okay, different reasons. However, I'm gonna go with Jaws, and just because it's one movie that never gets turned off, no matter what part it's in the middle of. I don't care if Quint's getting chewed up and it's only got 5 minutes left, or if it's at the beginning and Chrissy is running out to the beach and going in to go be a morning snack. It's all like, doesn't matter. It just stays on, and that's it. It's like, it's Jaws.
There's Brucey.
Yep. Smile, you son of a bitch. Boom. There we go. Yes, everybody laugh. Woo, I killed that bitch.
All right. I'm surprised you didn't say Rocky, but I get that Jerry Maguire is a life altering decision making flick for you.
And so is Rocky, but when you knock it down to 2,
I get it. Jerry is there for you at your lowest times and at your best times. Earlier, you talked about at the height of your suffering, the epitome of your suffering. What would you say you guys did, do, were, are suffering from or with? What is your worst situation of suffering?
Like imaginable, or just what I
No, personally, your personal experience of suffering. You can describe it or explain it.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, for those who are listening and are in your shoes or similar in your shoes or have been but don't even realize it or know it but don't kind of know how to put into words, or what do you suffer with continually on a daily basis?
Well, I think, let me just say this. I'll try to sum it up through cognitive distortions, because I think that is sort of at the base of most of it, which fuels the negative talk, which fuels the negative thoughts, which then fuels the knee deep, eye hole deep in shit. So definitely something from the cognitive side of things. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to this. To try to sum it up quickly, but
it doesn't have. That's okay. It doesn't have to be quick.
let me say this then. I'll try and wrap it up in a.
You're fine.
To live life being misunderstood, simultaneously having low self-worth and trying to push ahead, I think would be one of the biggest struggles that I have.
Feeling like an imposter, I would say, is the big thing, because it causes you, like, feeling like you can be something maybe that you're not supposed to be, get stuck in a rut of trying to be, and you realize that that's not really who you're supposed to be. Low self-esteem and a low self-value causes you to question everything about yourself and about things that you've been taught and about things that are said and about things that happen and everything. So it creates this fractured sense of self. When you live with a fractured sense of self, this piece over here, like it's hard to, until you start to connect the dots back, to try to glue them back together, where everything kind of plays into it. And from a very early age, I did not feel wanted, and I didn't feel connected to the people that I needed to feel connected to. And that caused a brokenness in me that it took years to understand why I do some of the things I do or think some of the things I think, and how it allows for ruts to develop really fast, because you get stuck in the cycles of, wanting things to be different but not knowing how to be different. And when you have like a baseline melancholy that is always self-induced and self-reflected and self-defeating, it's
the infinite sadness.
It is infinite sadness. That's kind of what it is, in a way. I feel like I'm in like this dark cloud over me, because I can't even like laugh at this point, because that was funny.
Well, you can laugh. It's your podcast. Yeah. You're allowed. We're all about the puns.
It was just I wasn't even trying to get that deep. It's just there's a lot of layers to it, and like, yes, I have a diagnosis of bipolar 2. I have a major depressive diagnosis, and those diagnoses are just, they're clusters of symptoms that happen to look like this or look like that, so they have to give them a code and they have to give them a name. So they're parts of me.
How do you think you have both helped reduce and relieve some of the struggle, or have you? Or regardless of how hard you try, it'll always be there.
For our own selves, personally?
Yeah. Personally. It's all about you two tonight, gentlemen.
How have we relieved some of it?
Yeah, how do you feel like since you've been on your healing journey and you've worked through it every day of your life, how do you feel you have gotten some relief?
Awareness and acceptance, just being aware of it. I think, like, identifying it, and sometimes you can, naming it. I think that alone, for some reason, gives some kind of relief and some kind of power. Like, okay, now I know what it is. At least I can kind of put the name to the face. And I think, did I say acceptance? I did say acceptance. Yeah, just accepting it. And like, some people get really hung up on a diagnosis, and I have this diagnosis and I don't know how. It's like, and I'm not minimizing it, but it's just like it's a word. Like, I don't even use it. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, it's like we're all in this thing, whatever it is that you have or not. It's like it's all here. We're all here. Like, we all have this, whatever it is. We all have something. So
everybody's got
let's
some
kind
shit.
of work through it and create an understanding, because I think through understanding would amount to some compassion or empathy towards others, and just I don't know the correct word I want to use, like just the ability to go, okay, like, this is not a bad person, they live with this. I don't know what this is like, but maybe let me learn a little bit about it, and it would help understand why this person took the actions they took.
Right. So basically, through accepting your own diagnoses and understanding it better, you've understood yourself better, and then can help better accept yourself, and you wish that other people would do the same.
Well, I mean, yeah, whether other people do that, I mean, I think that it would be better if they did.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't really,
Of course.
But
Acceptance with anything that's different that people don't understand is always the key.
yeah, and I think being your own advocate as well is, it's like being your own therapist, and learning more about it and what you can do. There's things out there that you can do, just by reading and learning things and understanding yourself, you can work towards it better or work with it better.
Sure.
I've said it before, it's kind of like a dormant volcano for me. I don't know if it's something that will ever just disappear. It's something that's always going to be there. So it's like accepting that part of it, and accepting that there is going to be bad days, and just pushing forward the best that I can do, because that's at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Is the best that I can do is if I know that I did my best, then I can't look back on it and have any kind of extra suffering or misplaced guilt thrown on top of what already is.
It started with the willingness to realize that if I don't do something about it, it's going to consume me. Now, the consumption, I just won't allow to happen at this point. But does it ever go away? I don't think it ever goes away completely. I think it can be put in boxes, it can be put up in the closet, it can be put up in the attic, it can be put in a storage unit. I don't think you can ever get rid of it, because truthfully, in those situations, I actually have learned more about myself than I ever thought possible. And I've also learned a lot more about just relationships in general, like our relationship, and just like a relationship with Tim. But you have to, in order to not suffer, you have to be willing not to suffer. And unfortunately, when people who live in a self-made hell of unworthiness, it's very comfortable to suffer, because you know what that's like. And when you know what something's like, it's easy to either fall back into it, or it's easy to not feel very comfortable when it's not there anymore. So it's very uncomfortable to not have that suffering, but yet it's more invigorating than it is all consuming.
That makes sense. So it sounds like acceptance, understanding of yourselves, bettering yourselves,
that's the biggest,
is always a beautiful thing.
Yes, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. I can't speak for him directly, but I would think that we've learned the thing that we wanted was to learn about ourselves. And you can't not help but learn about yourselves when you are taking care of the things that you need to take care of. And when you are willing to look at everything, and that means everything, good, bad, and ugly, the indifferent, everything, you get a different sense. And there is an acceptance, and you have to accept it. You have to accept your responsibility in it, and you have to accept your complicitness in allowing others to do it. And then you also have to accept that sometimes, unfortunately, we don't know any better just because A, we never questioned it, but B, we didn't realize that it was actually a fucking problem.
I mean, living with people with, mental wellness issues my whole life, and, in adulthood and childhood, and then as well as working in that field in the past, I've definitely noticed several things. Like, self-awareness is huge in people recognizing their issues and their struggles. But then as people do begin on healing journeys, getting comfortable with themselves at a different level and learning how to just be and just accept themselves and tackle themselves is an obstacle, because you live in this shell of this person for so long with these struggles and these issues and these thought processes. And then once you start to dissect that and think differently, it can also be incredibly uncomfortable for people.